Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Three-Dimensional Learning 101, Breaking Down the Basics with Molly Catalano. We're so excited to have you all here, but I'm going to give everybody just like a minute or two to join us while we wait. I would love to let everybody like participate in a quick little icebreaker. So go ahead and drop in the chat. Where are you from? Maybe what do you teach? What's your role in education? Or any of the other questions that are on the screen. Well, it's been over a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into things. Before I get started, I'm just going to share a couple helpful tips and then I'll pass things over to Molly. If you would like to access closed captioning today, please go ahead and click the CC button that is in the bottom tray of your Zoom, and that should go ahead and pop up closed captionings for you. We love to hear all of you guys participate, so please feel free to participate in the chat. And if there's time, maybe Molly will answer some of those questions in action. But if you have like a question that you are like just so burning desire, you want to get that answered, please submit that into the Q&A, and Molly will get to it at the end of our session with a little bit of Q&A time. You should receive a certificate of attendance from Zoom after this webinar, so please keep an eye out for that certificate attendance that's coming from Zoom within like 24 hours or so after the webinar ends. With that being said, I'd love to introduce you guys to Molly. Molly is a dedicated educator and advocate for science education, and she's based currently in Annapolis, Maryland. She has a rich background of teaching both elementary and middle school students, but her current focus right now is collaborating with K-12 educators to help them revolutionize science instruction and create engaging learning experiences with her students. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass things over to Molly. Thank you for joining us today, Molly.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm loving this chat. We are from all over. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy week to join us today, talking all things science. Feel free to utilize the chat. We're going to have that open. I'm going to be nosy and see what you all are saying. But I'm Molly. Thank you, Ryan, for introducing me. Follow me anywhere and introduce me wherever I may go. In our short time today, I'm very excited to chat with you all things three-dimensional science. But what is in store for you? So today we are going to be looking at what on earth is three-dimensional learning. We're going to really see that difference between what is traditional and what might be considered three-dimensional. We're going to dive into why is this beneficial for our kids, and then lastly, what are some of those baby steps that we can take in our own time to make our own instruction a little bit more three-dimensional. Now, today, as we go through, a little bit of a heads up, where you're hearing and seeing me in our screen right now, this is going to be what we'll call our learning tab. I'm going to have you open up another tab, and that's going to be like our doing tab, where you're going to be showing some of your learning. So we're going to go ahead and jump ourselves on in there. So I'm going to have you, I know you're like, we're doing stuff already. We're diving on in. In a new tab, if you could go on over to student.amplify.com/join, type in this code. I have two non-invasive icebreakers for you. I want to know, which airplane seat would you choose amongst some science friends? And also, what is your familiarity with the topics that we'll be chatting about today? So I'm going to give us about 2 minutes. That way we can familiarize ourselves and get us logged in. But also, we can share out what we know. So go ahead and head on over to Amplify Classroom, type in that code. Give me your favorite name. It could be your name, it could be your nickname, it could be your dog's name, whatever fits your fancy. And then you'll have 2 slides waiting for you. Ooh, I've got people popping in. I can see it already. And I'm going to leave this code up for a little bit. I know that we are all learners of our own beat, right? So we might need it for just an extra second. In the meantime, happy school year. I know that it's September, it's the beginning of school season. I hope things have been going well. Hope your classes are excited. Hope the morale in your buildings are great. Oh, this is fun to see. I see more people getting logged in. Oh my gosh, these responses are perfect. I can't wait to share them with you. All right, now what I will do is in the chat, just so I can share some of these fantastic responses, I'm going to go ahead and populate that link in the chat. So if you are coming in now and you need to see that, feel free to go take a peek over there. But I see that we're filling in, but we got to see what we're saying. You all are probably very curious as well. All right, so I said pick your seat. I've been seeing this all over socials lately, where you have, maybe for me it's like the Real Housewives, or maybe you have some other notable people, and we got to pick our airplane seat. So I love that I'm seeing some different results, and of course I had to pick some of my favorites and place them in here as well. All right, let's look. We have a three-way tie here. 2C is not popular. All right, let's see. It's what's left over. There you go. All right, someone's choosing 2A so they can talk to Bill, Miss Frizzle, and Dr. Honeydew. I love it. I'd love to chat with Bill Nye and Miss Frizzle. She wouldn't. She is a very polite teacher. She would never kick that seat. Turn around and speak to the Frit. I am so glad that some of you all are understanding these references. Some of my favorite. Yeah, we don't like the back. All right, don't mind being in a middle seat. I'll have you come and join me on all of my travels. That sounds fantastic. All right, so we know where we're sitting on the airplane. Now let's see where we are in terms of our learning. Okay, looking directly here, you've seen that I used our platform to show some of our toggles. It looks as if I did an overlay, all right, so we can see where everyone is. We're on the spectrum of 3D science learning. We've got some people in the know, some people might not be. It looks like we know more about science engineering practices than 3D learning, which is okay. Phenomena based, we are all over the map. All right. Someone is really curious what it means to teach in a three-dimensional model. You will find out today, my friend, I promise. This is great. I love that we all are being engaged and we are utilizing the tools. All right, now the audible groan. I know it's going to happen. I'm going to pause you so that way we can get to learning. But we're going to head back over to here when I say so, right? It's like those reading rainbows back in the day. When you hear the chime, turn the page. I'll let you know when we're headed back. But I like that we are all over in terms of what do we know. And that's really what is beautiful. So we can really dive into our learning. All right, diving directly on in. What is three-dimensional learning? All right, simply put, three-dimensional learning is really part of this instructional shift for science education. We really are expecting our students to become critical, innovative thinkers in this 21st century world, right? So we need our instruction to shift a little bit. We need that to look a little bit different as well. Typically, when people hear shifts, they're going to say, oh my gosh, a change. I can't add anything more to my plate right now. But I promise you, this is not a scary change because you're already doing a lot of this, maybe just in a little bit of a different order. But we'll look at what this looks like in a full lesson. But just know this is a bit of a shift. But why? Why are we shifting? What is wrong with the status quo? We're moving away from that traditional sit and get style approach to science instruction. You are very familiar with this probably. I know I taught like this. I know that I'm going to wince my face a little bit. I taught like this, but that's also how I was taught, right? Where we're going to start with the vocabulary for the day. And then my teacher is going to tell me some things, and then I'm going to regurgitate what my teacher has told me. All right. Students really need to go and think beyond these quick facts or enough to pass the test. We don't want to prepare our students just to be good Jeopardy players where they can regurgitate some fast facts to you. We want them to be able to think critically in the world around them. So, like we talked about with Miss Frizzle, we're going to let our kids get a little bit messy. We want them to do the learning. So they're also going to be the ones that are doing the investigating and the evidence digging and the talking in your classroom. So rooms are going to look a little bit different. Kids' roles are going to look little bit different, but also teachers' roles are going to look a little bit different. And how are students doing this? They're really going to be working through the lens of a scientist or an engineer. They're going to put that hat on and they get to figure out solutions to phenomena, right? Those real world events that take place. And this is what is fun because learning really sticks when it makes sense for kids in that sense of, why do I need to know this? Why is this relevant? When am I ever going to need to remember this, right? You know, your kids love to say that. So we're going to make sure that they know exactly when this is, when they need to know that, and the why behind it. So, what are the three dimensions? All right. The three dimensions represent the three strands or the three pieces to the puzzle that involve the framework for K 12 science education. This is what those next generation science standards really are based off of. We're not going to talk necessarily about the standards today. That's not our purpose, but just know that's what they're based off of. But these three pillars are what it means to really, for students to demonstrate proficiency by the end of their K-12 science career. So let's dive into what these three dimensions really are. All right, so in terms of 3D science learning, these standards, like I told you, we're not diving into, and here I am mentioning it again. These standards, they're written as performance expectations. We're not going to really have lists of stuff to memorize that is outdated. Now we're going to be moving into real statements of what should students be able to demonstrate or show you by the end of instruction. All right, now before we dive into it, I want to really set us up for success, and I want us to think of this as a delicious birthday cake. So if your birthday is coming up, go ahead and type it in the chat, and then we're going to pretend like this is a cake for you, that this is your birthday cake. All right, so if my performance expectation is a cake, by the end of instruction, whether it's today, this week, what that may look like, I want my students to be able to create a birthday cake or make that whole birthday cake. All right. That is that performance expectation. But in order to do that, they have to do a few things first. All right. First, we are talking about a birthday cake. So getting down to the core itself, it is the cake, right? That is the heart of the birthday cake, is the actual cake. And these are those disciplinary core ideas. All right, keep that in mind. Next, how do I bake a cake? What tools do I need to use? What processes are going to go in to make this cake? Those tools, those techniques, these are going to represent the science and engineering practices. And lastly, I know for me, I'm definitely going to put frosting on my cake. We're going to zhuzh it up. We're really going to enhance it. But I can also use this frosting in many other yummy, yummy desserts like cupcakes or donuts or cookies, if that is your preference. And this frosting is really going to represent those cross-cutting concepts. All right. Now that we've seen it look like a cake, we did a little backwards analogy, but sometimes that's what helps me make sense of things. Now, how do all of these come into play for science instruction? So we're going to take a step closer. All right. So that overarching performance expectation, this is what I want for my students to be able to show me or be able to do by the end of my instruction, right? Whether it is to whatever that may be. And we'll dive into that. Okay, that's my performance expectation. So to make this up, we're going to have those three different strands. That first strand, those are our disciplinary core ideas. Think of these as those monster buckets of science education, right? That students should learn throughout their time in science education, right? So we have physical science, we have life science, we have earth and space science, and then we have our engineering bucket as well. So those are our big buckets that our learning takes place into one of those. All right. That next piece, those science and engineering practices. What are those habits of mind that scientists take on? Are we going to be interpreting data that we've been collecting? Are we developing a model? Or are we going to dabble in a little bit of scientific argumentation? So think of when a scientist shows up to work, what are they doing? They're going to be working through some of those practices. All right. Lastly, those cross-cutting concepts. These are those big ideas that connect across all areas of science, right? We're going to see them various times in science because they're not just going to be in one spot, right? Observing a cause and effect relationship is not exclusive to earth science, like how water might shape a landscape over time, because I could also observe a cause and effect relationship in life science when maybe I'm not consuming the right balance of foods. All right, so these are those three strands. You can even think of it as a stool, right? That performance expectation is the seat. It's going to be held up by those three strands. Okay, now the other piece to this puzzle is that students are going to be working within these three dimensions to solve a phenomena or a real world problem. If we want our students to have that real life context, we want them to make sense of science that they're learning. I am also guilty, I will admit this, of teaching a topic based approach. Again, this is all that I knew because this is how I learned science. So I was like, oh, this is great. However, really seeing a topic based approach, it feels like a fact dump, right? Or saying, like, hey, in this unit, we're going to learn this amount of facts that my teacher wants me to memorize. It's not necessarily the most exciting. It's not necessarily the most relevant, and it's definitely not the most fun. So we're going to flip it around. Yes, if we look at that topic, if it says sunlight and weather, we will still be talking about sunlight and weather, but we're going to give them a storyline. Kids can follow a story. I can follow a story. So why don't we bring that into science class? So instead of just saying sunlight and weather, how about there are two schools in your town? One school has kids shivering because they're so cold at morning recess, where that other school down the street, those kids aren't wearing jackets because their playground is too hot. What causes this? And that is a easy, perfect phenomena that is very relatable for kids, right? Your kids have seen their playground. They've felt the temperature on their playground. They know what it's like to feel a little chilly when they're outside. All right. But we're still at the root of it talking about sunlight and weather. And guess what? We're going to give them a specific job or role. You know that your kids thrive. They won't admit it, but they thrive when you give them a smidge of ownership, right? So we're going to be weather scientists to figure out this playground mystery, really egg on this storyline, right? Kids like this. It is engaging for them. All right. Now, what is the difference between a traditional lesson or traditional science instruction versus three-dimensional learning? So we're going to take a peek at two of these so that way we can see how these really unfold. Now, before we dive in, we're going to set the lens of fourth grade, learning about fossils. Fourth grade was my favorite grade to teach, but hopefully maybe it's yours. We're going to look at this through the lens of how are fossils being formed in both of these lessons. So in my first traditional style lesson, this is what I would be doing in my traditional style lesson. This seems like something I would have done back when I was in the classroom before I really knew more about the three dimensions. But within this traditional lesson, we're going to set the scene. All right, kids, today we're going to be able to recognize different types of fossils, and we're also going to be able to describe how they're formed. Now, before we get started, today we're talking about fossils. Here's my vocabulary word. They might want to write it down. Fossils are a clue about life from the past that is preserved in rock. So we're going to let them know ahead of time what fossils look like or what it means, as well as that objective. What are we going for? All right, now I want for everyone to turn in their books. We're going to look at pages 7 and 8, and we're going to do a whole class reading. We're going to dive into what are fossils, some of these fast facts, right? Different examples, those types of fossils. We're going to see some of these pictures right here within my book. We're going to spend about 10 minutes doing that. Now that I've seen it, I've read a little bit about it. Now let's see it in action. Who doesn't love a brain pop? Tim and Moby are going to take over. They're going to show me some fossil examples. They're going to tell me a little bit more about fossils in that very fun, cartoonish way. You might have chosen a different video, but this is a way to demonstrate and show what those fossils look like. All right, now that we've seen that video, we've done some reading. Now we're going to do a turn and talk. I want for you to work with your elbow partner. I want for you to use specific details, though, from your reading and the brain pop. What are fossils? Make sure you're sharing out. And then I want for you to also tell me, how are those fossils being formed? And after we do that discussion piece, now we're going to do an exit ticket. You might have your favorite database of places to pull exit tickets or worksheets from. I always use Teachers Pay Teachers. This might be something that you are traditionally doing or have done or have seen, right? All right. Now that you've seen that traditional lesson, I want for you to go back into our Amplify classroom, and I want for you to answer this question for me. What do you notice or wonder about a traditional science lesson? Now, this is on you, on in your brain, right? What are you noticing? What we just went through? What makes you wonder? Maybe what are some inferences that you can pull? But anything that you have to share about a traditional science lesson, go ahead and type that in, and then we'll share some of our answers. Oh, it's still paused. Oh, how embarrassing. It's like when we're like, oh, we're still muted. I just wanted to keep you all on your toes. I appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for keeping me held accountable. Look at us working within. I love it. All right, take about 30 more seconds, then we're going to share out what we said. I love that some of you are saying this and not me. All right, as we look, let's see. And I have some of you anonymized. We don't need to make our names on the hot seat. Let's just make our explanations and what we're wondering. Teachers are the keepers of the knowledge. The answer is given right away within the first 15 minutes of class, right? We are spilling that secret sauce. We are giving them the magic at the beginning. It's not really that fun, right? Students are not interacting with each other or making meaning of their learning. Teacher driven, teacher centered. Yeah, students aren't having a chance to explore. They are working through a recipe of things that their teacher thinks is important. There is a lot of structure. I will give it that. Yeah. The schedule is rigid, not a lot of flexibility. Something I was a huge glutton of is if my students were really, that light bulb was going off. Ooh, we went on a tangent. But that's where real learning happens, right? When you're having that courageous conversation, your kids are getting excited, they're bringing in their past knowledge. So, yeah, something like this might not lend itself well to that. It makes me wonder if students can really grasp fossils or whatever topic without touching or doing. I could not agree more. Yep, they don't get to touch, they don't get to explore. Yeah, I would be curious if this would spark a student's interest or not. Ooh, look at this. The engagement is like a student and not like a scientist. Force feeding the children material. Very little student exploration. Dry and teacher driven. All right, you all said it. Remember, this was not my words. You all said this. Okay. All right, now I know that I'm pausing this intentionally. All right. Now that we've seen a traditional lesson, let's dive back in. How can I make this very three-dimensional? And what would the difference between those look like? All right. So, yes, this is still a fourth grade lesson. We are still looking at fossils. However, this is going to be in that different lens, more three-dimensional. To give you a smidge of background, this lesson, students, before this lesson takes place, students see the phenomena. They're understanding that there is a mysterious fossil at the bottom of a canyon, and they have to be able to figure out what it is. How did it get there? And then they have to share that finding with the caretakers of that national park. So that way they're in the know and can tell other visitors that come. All right. Students are geologists as well. Okay, that background being said, let's dive into this lesson. So first, you'll notice it does have that same structure. I won't deny that. But we're going to dive directly on in. All right. You'll notice that we are going to be looking at examples of fossils. All right. I have picture cards. Maybe my classroom, maybe my school does not have actual fossils, but I want my students to see some examples. So I'm going to print them out. We're going to have hand lenses, be that scientist, right? We're going to make observations. I am not going to give my students restrictions. Make some observations, things that you might hear, right? This looks dirty. This looks old. Is this a fish? This looks like a footprint in mud on the playground, right? And all of those are very valid. Those are all observations that they are seeing and observing within these picture cards. So now that they have seen some examples of fossils, now we're going to go and see how fossils are formed, okay? So this can be the time where I say, well, what is a fossil? Everything you just saw within those picture cards, those are fossils, and they're going to give us about a little bit of clue about what life was like, and it's all preserved in this rock. So I'm going to go into a digital simulation. I cannot mimic how fossils form over time in a classroom because that's going to take a very long time. And unfortunately, my kids got to move to the next grade, right? So we're going to use a digital simulation to really model how fossils are formed over a long span of time by adding some organisms, by seeing what happens when water changes that landscape over time. Now that I've seen those fossils take place, now we're going to have a chance to chat. We're going to have a chance to maybe read some about fossils, right? So I'm going to work with my partner. We're going to go into our reading and we're going to look at some clues, maybe that I didn't see from my sim, maybe some things that I didn't necessarily grab from those picture cards, okay? And I'm gonna be able to chat with my elbow partner, my neighbor, my fellow geologist about what I'm learning. How does this tie in with what I saw in the sim? Why might this look different? I might say, oh, that leaf is very intact, or look at all of the bones, right? I wonder why this is cut in half, or what does that entail? All right, so really having that rich discussion with my partner. Now, lastly, I'm going to reflect on how fossils are formed. Okay, now that I've seen it take place in that model, I've seen some examples, I've listened to what my partner says. Now I'm going to record how do I think fossils are formed. So I'm going to write my claim, right? I think fossils are formed by, and I'm going to share my expertise of what I learned from this lesson. Okay, before we debrief, I want for you to head back over to our doing tab. All right. And I want for you to do the same that we did before. And I want for you, and I'm going to unpause you. Look, I did it already. What do you notice or wonder about this lesson? Maybe how it's different than that first lesson. Maybe something else that you noticed. And I'll give some wait time. We'll give you a few moments to add in your thoughts. And if you are curious, this lesson does come from one of my favorite units in Amplify, Science. Yes, I work for Amplify, so I know this program very well. So I like using this lesson because thinking of earth science with young ones, especially in fourth grade, if I can't go see something formed, right, like parts of the body or the water cycle, right, can't go up in the sky, it's hard for those abstract concepts to come to life. So I love that we have opportunities to let it be known and be seen within the classroom. All right, I'm going to give you about 15 or 20 more seconds to add your thoughts, and then we will share out. You all are doing so great. All right, I'm seeing the typing stop. So I'm pausing you. Sorry. Okay, we're going to dive on in. Now I'm going to go over here and we're going to see what we've compiled. What did we notice or wonder about this three-dimensional lesson? Students are able to explore and act like a scientist to solve that phenomena. They sure are. They're given the opportunity to explore, ask questions, construct their own learning. It is powerful, meaningful, and more memorable learning. I did not write this, everyone. This is one of you. So I appreciate you. That is absolutely true. They're creating their own process, right? Their own thoughts. They're solidifying what they're seeing with their own past experiences, putting it on paper. Much more student driven, more engaging. Yeah, you notice that there was a good chunk of time within that lesson. If I was a fourth grade teacher and I had an hour to teach science, that would be like a Christmas present. Just know if you taught one of those activities in isolation, it's still really good practices, right? You're still working through those concepts. You'll do them in that same order, but maybe different times, okay? Students are the explorers. They are the ones that are doing the observations. You're completely correct. Hands-on experiences, lifelike exploration using the sim. Yeah. This we have a question. How can you engage students in that discussion, right? As you're maneuvering around the room or you're hearing when they're working in partners, you might want to tap in and tap someone's shoulder and be like, I love how you phrase this. Can you share that with the group? Or even if you want to flip it, you have a reluctant student, you might say, hey, I want for you to share what your partner said. So that way it's not their thought, but they already heard it. And it's going to give them that confidence to share out as well. Students are investigating and exploring. There's hands-on. You are correct. Student thinking. The answers are not provided, but the exploration is promoted. I love this. I'm going to steal that for a future use. I completely agree. What you noticed is it's some of those similar elements between those two lessons, right? But they're in a little bit of a different order. So instead of that traditional, the I do, we do, you do, we're going to flip it. I want for you all to do it first. You get messy, you figure it out, and then we're going to make some meaning behind it. Absolutely. All right. Why is this so beneficial? Now, as we've worked through and as you've seen the difference between those two lessons, you probably are already understanding why is this a beneficial shift, right? Well, thinking of this, yes, it is a shift, but this is a really good shift. All right. We're shifting more towards that well-rounded 21st century learner. Okay. That three-dimensional instruction is going to provide that deeper understanding for those core ideas, really allowing that learning to stick. When we make it messy, when they're going through that cycle, things are going to stick. What's not going to stick is if I tell you what a fossil is, if I tell you how it's formed, and then I ask you a multiple choice question, it might not stick, right? Students are actively engaged with those science and engineering practices because they're not just receiving that information, they're the ones in charge of figuring it out. Since the learning is really grounded in that phenomena, students are making those meaningful connections to their own world. And that's really the beauty of that phenomena. In a couple minutes, we're going to talk about some baby steps and really bringing it home to your community is the most fabulous first step, right? Your kids are living in that community. Let's bring in what they already know right into science class. Lastly, 3D learning gives multiple entry points to the learning. All right, in one specific science class, you might have a lot of different learner styles there, right? So if we give all of those students that opportunity to see that learning in the style that makes sense for them, they're all going to feel like they have that seat at the science table. This really makes science much more of an inclusive subject rather than the ones that are just good at science, right? Because we all can be good at science. We're all citizens of our world, right? We all see it. If you look on the screen, these are things, if someone were to say, what do you want or what do you hope for a science classroom to look or feel like? What do you want your students to do? I imagine a lot of these words are going to come, right? Oh, we want students to think and interpret and evaluate. If we want our students to be doing all of these things, we got to let them do it. We can't be the ones to do it. We have to let our students do it and we have to let them take that charge. So, as a teacher, I'm going to take that step back. I am now that facilitator. I'm going to let my students surprise me because you will be really surprised with what your students are capable of. When they have that ownership, they're going to love that. They're going to take that initiative. All right. This is the last time I'm going to have us head over to our doing tab. I want to see what you've picked up on. So what I have, we have a card sort. Now, what this is going to do is you're going to have some words, maybe some phrases, some buzzwords. Where would you group these? Would you put it more into that three-dimensional learning category, or would you put them more into that traditional learning category. I'm going to have you take a minute or so and plug these in, and I'm interested to see how some of you maneuver a couple of these. Look at all of us working. Some of us are on a roll. A card sort, whether it's digital or print, is a very simplistic way to get kids chatting, especially if you throw a couple in there that might be the gray area between the two. Let's spark a little respectful argumentation within our classroom. And I might have done that in here. Sneak peek. All right, 30 more seconds. Oh, I like that some of us are leaving those intentional gray ones kind of right in the middle. That's very interesting to see. I can see your learning just take place right here on the screen. And I'm not going to pause you. I'm going to let you all keep working as well. But if you'd like to look over here, we're going to work on this one together, okay? All right. So is it traditional? Is it three-dimensional? All right. We're going to move for this is how I learn. I'm going to move my placeholders up. I see this vocabulary worksheet right away. We're going to move that over to traditional, right? This is not going to give you a good depth of what students understand. This is going to let you know that they can regurgitate some definitions. How could they apply those definitions to an actual scenario? We know anchored in real world phenomena, three-dimensional. We want students to figure it out, three-dimensional. Yep, completing worksheets we're going to put over here in that traditional learning. The focus on the what and not the why. All right. And this is really important. While you're tailoring some of your questions, think about what kind of responses might you elicit from these, right? If you're asking a lot of what questions and getting like a 1 or 2 word answer back, maybe we should swap up some of those WHs, right? Why would this happen? Or when could this occur? Or when else might this happen, right? So changing some of those phrasings really will change some of the answers that you're getting as well. Learning facts in isolation, you got that right. Collaborative discussion, we could have that in both, but I'm going to lend itself just for our topic today on three-dimensional learning. We're going to place it right on in there. We want our students to think critically. We want them to think about that phenomena. What's happening? How can I solve it? Now, I noticed that a lot of you put solving problems somewhere in the middle. We're not sure where that may go because they can solve problems in both. So I'm going to leave it in the middle for here. Focus on memorization and recall. This vocabulary worksheet is an exact indicator of that. I noticed some of us also put teacher asks, student answers. Because yes, as the facilitator, I still might be asking questions and hoping my students respond. So I'm going to leave that right in the middle here, as well as at asking questions. Students are passive receivers of information. You got that right. Teachers are the keeper of the knowledge. We want our students to be the keepers of the knowledge. We want them to be the figuring out. Topic-based, traditional. Teacher guide sense making rather than delivering the facts, right? You are there to help as our students are working through. Perfect. Connecting ideas across science disciplines. We like things that are not only cross curricular, but how can I see this in other ways or other times that I've seen this in science? And that might be a fun spiral, right? If you're learning about something in life science, say, have we seen this before when we were talking about rocks or when we were looking at the ecosystem, right? Having those connections will really help solidify that knowledge as well. I'm also going to put vocabulary activity here. I noticed a lot of you place this in the middle where, yes, I could do a vocabulary activity for both of them. What is the rigor or what is the richness of that vocabulary activity? That's going to be the real gauge, right? How is this lending itself for my students? All right. I love a card sort. And I love how all of you were very engaged and you were working through. And I like that you made that middle column. How can we make these baby steps happen today? Of course, we would love everyone to really dive headfirst and through to this three-dimensional world, but what can you do to take those tiny little baby steps in your instruction, in your classroom, in your school today? I know some of you were homeschoolers. Perfect. This is a fantastic example to really make this relevant directly in your home. All right, the first thing, let's start with a phenomena. All right, so in the spirit of what's in and what's out, what is out is telling students that plants need sunlight to grow. We don't want to give away that secret sauce, that magic. We want kids to figure out that magic throughout their learning. What is in? Let's create a story. Now, you can make this as far-fetched as you can tell. I'm animated. My poor students probably thought that I was over-caffeinated, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's make this exciting, and we can make little white lies. That's not a big deal. All right. My aunt is so confused. She bought two of these same plants. She kept both of them inside of her house. Why do they look so different? I don't have to say that maybe she kept one in a closet or she kept one in the refrigerator, but we're going to play along. We're going to add to this storyline. All right. And these are just images you can find off of the computer, or you can bring in real life props to help with your storyline. If that is a little much, make it simple. All right. Why do puddles disappear? Let's keep it short and sweet, but something as simple as this is going to start making those wheels turn. Oh, yeah, it was raining. There was a puddle. Now the puddle is gone. Where did it go? Okay. All right. So we can make it a very simplistic phenomena. Lastly, make it community based or make it relevant to where you live. I have to almost like hide my slide from my own view. I live in Maryland, so we've had our share of cicadas, right? Those are the things that make the loud sound. They hide underground for a long period of time, and then they come up, they make a ton of noise, they are ready to have their babies, and then you don't see them again for 17 years. All right. So that is a phenomena all in itself. Well, why are they underground? Why are they making those noises? You know, what are they doing when they're not up in the air or invading your trees, right? So make it very community specific. Do you live near a body of water? Do you have a specific critter that we could really talk about? Maybe it's an invasive species that we could bring up. So make it very community specific because that's relevant for your kids. They're like, oh, I've seen this. Oh, I live near there. Oh, I've done this before, right? Like they're having those prior experiences, they're bringing those to the table. Another small baby step you can do is let's just add one of these science or engineering practices. Just focus one at a time. We don't have to do the full-fledged everything all at once. Let's just do one. And you have 8 great ones to pick from. If I look, let's focus on analyzing and interpreting data. So what is out is a teacher describing a trend in weather data over a year. They might show a graph and say, within this region, you'll notice here's where that curve is. Here's where that trend in data lies. That involves the seasons, right? You just told your kids a bunch of facts. Let's have them do the digging. So instead, have your students collect either local weather data, have them pick their favorite destination or something else, grab that data for the weather that happens on a monthly basis. Let's graph it. And then we're going to interpret. What do those trends tell you? How could we be able to tell someone who wants to travel here when the best time of the year to travel is based on weather, right? So allowing our kids to really make sense of it, But also, if they're already looking at that data, they're already looking at those trends, take that extra step and let them do that digging, right? Finding out that work in itself. Um, Another piece, let's add a cross-cutting concept lens. So you'll notice that, yes, these are those big ideas that we can make happen in any of those buckets of science. But let's take a peek at structure and function as one of those examples right now. What is out? Students memorizing parts of the cell. I know that we can't see hands, but raise your hand if you had to memorize all the parts of the cell. My sixth grade teacher loved the coloring pencils. Oh, we had our sheets, we colored them, we knew those parts of the cell. Why? Why was that important? What's interesting is have your students take that spin on it, right? You probably do plant and animal on different days. Put them together at the very beginning before you dive into it. What patterns do you notice? What do they both have? What does one have that one doesn't have? Why might these structures be so different? So really allowing your students to make that onus, make sense of that, right? To see them comparing before we really compare. Another small baby step, have your students generate questions. They are loaded to chat. Your kids love to chat. So let's use that power on our side. So instead of me saying, what causes tides? We're going to pull up this time lapse video of a coastline in Nova Scotia, right? I might play this and say, do the I notice, I wonder routine with them, just like we did before. I want for you to generate questions. They might say, where did the water go? Oh, I noticed something on these rocks over here. There's lines. Why does it stop? Why is it a drastic drop off? Why is there grass not growing on the side? Let your students' questions drive the investigations later, or have them refer back to those questions. And after you're done, let's answer those questions because we've probably seen it. Those are going to drive that instruction, drive those curiosity for your kids. The last baby step, and you saw this when we were looking at those lessons today, save vocabulary. It is not the secret sauce. We don't have to make this the star of the show at the beginning of every single lesson. All right, let's hold off. So instead of starting with that introduction with vocabulary, I can't tell you how many Marzanos we did in the middle school where I taught. Let's tie the vocabulary term after students make those observations. All right, instead of saying, here's what gravity is, and then doing something with gravity, let's have that block drop. Let's have a book drop. Let's have something fall to the ground, and then we can tie that vocabulary word in after the fact. So yes, these are baby steps that you can take, but I promise every step is closer to that three-dimensional instruction, giving your students that well-rounded scientist, putting them on that front burner, giving them that opportunity to really learn like a scientist. Now, yes, these are baby steps that you can take, but what you also will have, and I'm going to drop this link into the chat. What we have is, give me 2 seconds, multitasking might not be my forte today. Okay, here is a link. We have a bundle, a learning bundle for you for K-8 three-dimensional learning when it comes to science. You're going to have pieces in there that have printable posters. How might I make a big change? How do I have those courageous conversations with my admin about, hey, we want to make this shift. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you putting that in the chat. We want to have this shift within our school. How do I have and make that courageous conversation happen? So this is completely free for you. Utilize them, share them, talk about them in your collaborative planning time, whatever that may look like. This is a really great resource for you all to utilize. All right, as you can tell, this is something I am very passionate about. I love talking about science education, especially to educators, but we are getting close to time. I could pull your ear and chat with you all day, but I know that some of you are getting ready to pick up kids from daycare, or you are ready to start making dinner, or maybe my friends over in Morocco, you're ready to head to bed. So if there's anything that's burning, please feel free to type it in the chat. I'm happy. Laura's still at work in California. Laura, thank you for plugging in today. We really appreciate you. I'm East Coast, so our day is almost ending over here. I'm so glad that all of you came and we're learning more about three-dimensional instruction and what that looks like. I promise baby steps are steps. and any step closer to having your students love science and not just think it's one other thing on their daily agenda. But I really appreciate your time today. Have a fantastic school year. And anything that you see that is coming in your classroom, tag us over at Amplify. We would love to see it. We love to share in your excitement as well.
Thank you so much, Molly. You're so incredible. Well, while we wait for people to go ahead and drop some questions in the Q&A, I'm just going to share a few free resources from Amplify Science. To access that 3D learning bundle Molly was talking about, you can head over to amplify.com/3D-learning-bundle. You'll gain access to a bunch of free, ready-to-use resources like professional development for you and posters and other things for your students as well. If you are looking to take some of those baby steps, or even if you're ready to take larger, lasting steps to create change in your classroom with three-dimensional learning, download our free science change management playbook. You can access that at amplify.com/science/change-management. We'd also love for you all to grab some of our free activities that we have at amplify.com/science-free-resources. You'll gain access to our most popular resources, like some of our free activities, posters, professional development, how-to guides, a whole bunch of incredible stuff is over there. So I'm going to go ahead and check the Q&A to see if we have any questions. But it looks like we don't have any other questions. So with that, I will just say thank you all so much for joining us. You're absolutely incredible as always, Molly. One of my favorite people to do webinars with. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I love to chat, so pull me in.
Absolutely. I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening, and we'll see you back for the next one. Bye.
Bye, team.